Catherine had everything she could ever want in life. Richard was a blessing who came into her life at a time when she had no dreams. He was a wealthy and successful businessman. At first, his love and care filled her with joy. But as the years of their marriage passed, she realized that Richard's love was confined to the boundaries of money. He provided her with every luxury imaginable, yet he couldn't give her the love and closeness a wife should receive from her husband. She was alone in their palatial home. The rooms were filled with expensive paintings and sculptures, but none of them had a soul. She had 2 children, but they were closer to their nurses and nannies than to her. Richard was often abroad. His business trips seemed endless. Even his phone calls felt mechanical. "Everything is secure. Do you need anything? The money is in the bank. Take good care of the children." These were the only words he ever seemed to say. One evening she sat alone in a chair on the expansive balcony. The city lights began to twinkle in the fading twilight, but her mind was in darkness. For days, she hadn't had a proper conversation with anyone. Like a machine, she walked from one room to another, trying to recall in which cupboard she had hidden her happiness. She started to feel that this palace was a golden cage and she was a prisoner within it. The question of what she was living for haunted her. Every day she would dress in beautiful clothes, style her hair, and put on lipstick. But there was no one to see it. Her husband had been away for months, her children were in their own world, and the staff were busy with their duties. What is all this for? She asked herself in front of the mirror. This beauty, this life, for whom? There was no answer to that question. The arrival of Julian. One morning, Catherine heard an unusual commotion from the kitchen and went to investigate. She didn't usually go into the kitchen. She thought perhaps the house staff were arguing. A new houseman was standing there. He looked young, with a tall build, neat hair, and calm eyes. He didn't bow his head in the usual manner of the staff. He looked directly at her. In his gaze, she saw neither disrespect nor fear. Instead, she saw a kind of tranquility and detachment. "Ma'am, this is the new houseman. His name is Julian," the head housekeeper introduced him. "No one would believe he's 60 years old." Catherine looked at him in surprise. 60. She couldn't believe it. There wasn't a single wrinkle on his face. She had expected him to bow his head quickly, like all the other staff in the house. But he stood tall. This wounded her ego. Catherine thought to herself, "I am the wife of a rich man, and because of that you must respect me." From that day on, Catherine began to observe the houseman. She realized that he paid no attention to her beauty. No matter how expensive the clothes she wore or how much she smiled, he focused only on his work. Even while sweeping the yard or watering the plants, his eyes were cast downwards. Not once did he look at her. This began to annoy Catherine even more. She intentionally tried to get his attention. She would walk past him while he was working. Sometimes she would go to the kitchen just to get a glass of water. But each time, he ignored her. He would do his work and then walk away quickly. Catherine's disappointment and anger. One day, she stormed into her room and slammed the door shut. "What an arrogant man he is," she said to herself, looking in the mirror. "I have so much beauty and status, yet he doesn't notice me. Everyone else is amazed by my beauty, but only he." The suppressed anger within her began to erupt like a volcano. She wanted to control him, she wanted to capture his attention. What was the way to do it? She sat and thought. If she pretended to be ill, would he come to her room? A malicious thought entered Catherine's mind. Male staff were usually not allowed to enter the master's bedroom. But she decided to break this rule. She tousled her hair, applied some dark kohl under her eyes, and lay back against the wall, pretending to be sick. She called a maid and said, "I have a terrible headache. Tell that new houseman to bring me some hot water." The maid looked at her in surprise. Usually, Catherine would ask the nurses for anything she needed. But the maid obeyed. Soon, there was a knock on her bedroom door. Her heart pounding, she said, "Come in." The door opened and he walked in, holding a glass of hot water. Catherine looked at him and said, "Why don't you look at me? Do you have no respect for me?" "Ma'am, I was hired as a houseman. My work is my respect," he said, bowing his head. She grew angry. "What is your name?" she asked with fury. "Julian." She remembered the name. "You're not like the other staff, are you?" "I am a normal person, ma'am. I can't stay in this room any longer. Please drink your water." He placed the glass on the table and turned to walk away. Catherine couldn't stop him. Her mind was completely under his control. What nerve he has, she asked herself. Nights of fear. She couldn't sleep that night. The anger within her began to turn into fear. She decided to secretly go to the houseman's room. Was there a secret in his room? What was the reason behind his behavior? She quietly crept out of her room and walked towards the staff quarters. She saw him leaving his room. She quickly ran to the kitchen and leaned against a table. She thought he would be frantic when he realized she wasn't in her room. Soon he came into the kitchen. When he saw her, he asked in surprise, "Ma'am, what are you doing here at this hour?" "I was thirsty. I came to get a glass of water," she said. "I was coming to bring you water," he said. "When I saw no one in your room, I was worried." She felt a small smile when she saw his unnecessary concern. "Thank you," she said. That day was the beginning of everything. He began to come to her room every night. He would enter when she pretended to be asleep. She was afraid, unable to move. He came close to her. He would very gently touch her head or forehead. The touch was strange. It was like an electric current flowing through her body, through his fingers. She was shocked, but fear kept her from moving. Slowly she began to fear him. She called her husband and asked for a female servant. But her husband threatened her, saying his houseman was a good man and he only needed one assistant. Richard's words hit Catherine's heart like a storm. His words, "a good man," frightened her even more. She couldn't sleep during those nights. She tried to open up to her husband, but he didn't believe her. She feared that the houseman was misusing his authority in her husband's absence. Each night, her mind was in a state of dread. She would lie awake, listening for his footsteps ending at her door. When his fingers touched her body, a kind of fear would paralyze her. She didn't know if his touch was a treatment or had another sinister purpose. She began to look at everyone around her with suspicion. The staff, the children, even the house itself felt like a prison. When she called her husband again to say, "I don't need any more help," he got angry. "What do you want? You have every comfort. What is your problem?" he asked. This completely isolated Catherine. Her fear began to grow into madness. She was even afraid of his presence. When he walked past the kitchen, she would nervously move away. She began to consider herself as having a mental illness. The truth is revealed. One day, Richard called her on the phone and insisted she go shopping. She agreed due to his persistence. But her mind was uneasy. She intentionally finished her shopping early and hurried back home. When she arrived, she parked the car in the porch and entered silently. She heard voices from her husband's study. She went to the door and listened. "Sir, I think this treatment is no longer necessary. Ma'am's immunity has improved," the houseman said. "Don't say that, Julian. I know your treatments are effective. Her condition must be cured," Richard said. "It's not a disease, sir. Sometimes it can be a natural obstacle. What I'm doing is to help overcome it," Julian said calmly. Catherine felt as if her head was spinning. Condition, treatment. What were they talking about? She had no clue. That day she decided to see a doctor. Without telling anyone, she secretly went to a hospital. She saw a doctor and told her everything. The doctor ran some tests. "Catherine, you are pregnant," the doctor said happily. Catherine was shocked by the news. A thought flashed through her mind like lightning. Who is the father of this baby? She felt like she was going mad. She couldn't understand anything. With the news, she drove back home. A storm of questions swirled in her head. How could she be pregnant when her husband was abroad? The houseman? His touches. The headache became unbearable, and she pulled the car to the side of the road. Suddenly, a thought came to her. For the past 10 years, she had not been able to have children. She had seen many doctors and tried many treatments, but nothing had worked. She remembered what Richard had told her then. "We'll face everything together, Catherine. I will be with you through everything." Yet for the past 6 months, she hadn't seen a single doctor. She didn't have any illness. Then why was the houseman treating her? Why did her husband keep him here? Slowly, she began to understand. Julian wasn't a houseman. He was a healer with a special method of treatment. He was a person who provided secret treatments without people knowing. His every touch was energy healing. Richard had brought this secret healer into the house for her, who had been suffering for years, unable to conceive despite all her treatments. When she tried to get the houseman's attention, he didn't see her arrogance, he saw her condition. Richard's lack of affection wasn't a drama. She wanted a child, and her husband wanted to give her that happiness. That's why Richard had done everything in secret. She realized her husband's silent love and care. This palace was not a golden cage, it was a sanctuary. A life filled with happiness. Shedding the weight from her mind, she drove back home. She reached the house quickly and ran to Julian's room. When she entered the room, Julian looked at her in surprise. "Mom, why are you here?" "Were you really treating me?" she asked. He smiled. "Yes, ma'am, your mind and body needed energy, that's all I did." She felt ashamed. She realized that she had been living in a terrible misunderstanding because of her arrogance and selfishness. She fell to her knees and apologized. "I'm so sorry. I saw you as just a houseman. I behaved so badly, I was in so much pain," she said, weeping. Julian helped her up. "Ma'am, you didn't do anything wrong. You were my patient. Your mind was not happy. That's why you were unwell." Those words touched Catherine's heart. That night, she talked to her husband. She opened up about everything. Their relationship deepened, and their love grew stronger. Happiness and peace filled Catherine's palace. She gave birth to a child. The houseman became the person she was closest to in the house. She no longer saw him as a houseman, but as the person who changed her life. He gave back the love and happiness she had lost in life.